Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of the And Both podcast. My guest is Heather Chauvin. She is a leadership coach who helps successful women courageously and authentically live, work, and parent on their own terms. She started her career as a social worker, helping adults understand children's behavior. But everything changed in 2013 when a stage 4 cancer diagnosis pushed her to take a deeper stand for change, uncovering how cultural expectations sabotage our dreams. She's been featured everywhere: Forbes, Entrepreneur, Real Simple magazine, Mind, Body, Green, Google, and more. And when Heather isn't working, you'll find her living out what she teaches, which include things like kayaking in Alaska, snowboarding, hiking, or anything that challenges what she believes is possible for herself. Life is full of opportunities, and Heather is definitely making the most of it. And what I took away from this conversation, what I hope people take away from this conversation, is she's one of those people that you spend time with and you feel like, yeah, I could totally do the thing that I've been putting on the back burner, and in a really authentic way. And that's why I'm really excited to bring this conversation to you today, because I think a lot of times what happens is when you talk to people that really push for change in individually and cultural change, that sometimes what happens is it kind of feels like a steamroller. But she really is so genuine in her mission and how she truly believes in what people can accomplish for themselves. And so I hope that you enjoy the episode. Here's Heather. Hello, and welcome to the And Both podcast. Here we are going to hear from moms and those in motherhood that are doing the thing that works for them. They are honoring themselves alongside the all-encompassing role and level of expectation that is motherhood. And we are going to hear from as many different people as possible in their own experience. So you can find people to relate to. You can hear stories that will make you laugh, make you cry, all of the above, and that we will come together as a community to support one another in a way that is holistic and honoring of the woman and the mother as a whole. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the And Both podcast. I am here today with Heather Chauvin. Welcome.
Hello, I'm excited. It's our second time we get to hang out.
I know. I'm so excited. I really picked up on the vibe last time I was on your podcast. You had the hoodie and the comfy clothes on. And so this time I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that. Because oftentimes it is some sort of, even though we talked about this video piece, I still have a little bit of let's not roll in my ripped up band t-shirt from a million years ago. So we have an outfit going on that no one is going to see because it's 9:00 in the morning, and I don't want any video at 9 or 10 or any time.
It's very interesting because when I look in my closet, I always struggle with this business casual, because if I feel most myself and most alive when I'm wearing a hoodie. Could be a really good quality hoodie. I'll do my hair, I'll do my makeup. But when I'm doing these interviews all the time, I'm like, everyone's so dressed up. I'm like, yeah, I could, from the neck up, I'll be put together. But then you have this whole ultra endurance athlete people, and you're like, they wear baseball caps everywhere they go. So why can't I do that?
Yeah. I mean, why? The worst thing in an interview is wearing something that is too tight. When you have the outfit that you stand in and you sit down, you're like, I can't concentrate on anything because I feel like my pulse is in my stomach right now. What is
100%.
happening?
Yeah. I think this is going to be playing into our conversation today. But it's who are you? And does it feel aligned? Does it feel good? And can you be yourself?
Exactly. Well, and on that note, how about you let people know what you want to know about you? Because I am totally fascinated. You and I recorded an episode for your podcast. And in the process of that recording or preparing to record, I listened to some of your podcast episodes and I'm totally fascinated. But you have a big story. Tell people what you want them to know about you.
Every time I'm asked this question at this point, I'm like, I'm a soul having a human experience. We're just here for this wild ride. I think for the sake of positioning how we're even having this conversation, I started my career as a mother. my career. 20 years ago, I was 18 when I became a mother, and I now have 3 boys. They're 20, 15, and 12. And motherhood was the thing that cracked me. As you could imagine, being young and making that choice and then going into it single, living in my mother's basement, like just about to go to post-secondary, having to obviously I did actually make a pivot and then chose to go to university. I was going to go to college, and I live in Canada, so college means different than it does in the States. But I was like, if I can do this, I can do anything. And so I went all in on who I wanted to be and how I wanted to feel. And I always tell people I was an underachiever before motherhood. As a teenager, I was what people would call unmotivated. And I was the rebel. I was the questioner. But really what I was highly anxious. And so we could have labeled that as depression, but I was just highly, highly anxious and sensitive and didn't understand myself, didn't understand who I was. And I would always be like, what's the point? What's the point of living? So when I became a mother, I was like, oh, this is my purpose. Motherhood is my purpose. So now I am literally going to get out of bed for this child. And as I began to do that, and I was like, okay, let's go do the thing. Let's go to school. And I'm getting the pats on the back. It's like, look at you. You're so young. You're so like, you're doing great. But on the inside, externally, I'm checking the boxes. But on the inside, I'm like, literally dying. I'm like, not this, not this. This is unsustainable. I'm exhausted. I'm fatigued. I'm scared. I'm scared because there's a part of me that knows I can't live like this long term. And fast forward, I go to school, I become a social worker, I do the things, I check the boxes, I do the things I'm supposed to do. I get the pinnacle social work job, again, more pats on the back. And I am so out of alignment. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not the life that I want. And I can't really tell anybody because they are proud of me and they don't understand like what my soul is craving. And I don't know how to put words to that. And I'm a woman and I'm a mother. So it's selfish to have desires. It's selfish to go after what you want and desire. So I started taking little baby action steps towards that. And this is back in the day. So it's like, 12, 13, 14 years ago, before podcasts were cool and Facebook ads. And I go down this rabbit hole. I click on a Facebook ad. I go down this rabbit hole, and this woman with like ripped jeans is talking about business. And I'm like, wow, she's not wearing a suit. This is pretty cool. And I like her energy. I like her vibe. I like her values. And so I went down the rabbit hole of coaching. And I'm like, oh, maybe instead of being a therapist or a social worker, I can essentially be the change I want to see instead of just perpetuating broken systems and bureaucracy. And so I left my job, my career as a social worker formally, and had to let go of that, I guess, distinction or label. And I went online, and it was about, when I look back, it was about 6 months. I signed the papers, like the safety net of I am not coming back. My youngest was a year old, and I was still breastfeeding, and my body was like, not mine. And I'm like, okay, this feels weird, but, I'm bouncing back after baby. And I was diagnosed with cancer, and my abdomen was swollen. I was in startup in my business, so I did have some coaching clients, no safety net, no maternity leave, no money coming in, just what I was doing, per session. And my youngest, yeah, he was about a year once I was diagnosed. And here I am going after my quote unquote dreams, building a business, married at the time. Well, I'm still married, not at the time. I was married, same guy. And We have 2 additional children together. Things are going well. And my physical body is not thriving. And I'm like backed into a corner once again, going, I got to figure this out. I got to figure this out because if I don't figure this out, the only way out is through. I know tomorrow isn't guaranteed. And that was when I took my work. I mean, we could talk about what I was doing, but when I took my work to the next level and I was like, we are living backwards as women, especially mothers. And those little aches that I had, the little whispers of like, this is not sustainable. I cannot do this. I mean, you don't guarantee, health and vitality. But there were many, many times where I was like, it is selfish to consider your symptoms. It is selfish to consider your symptoms because if you do, you are taking away from other people. So yeah, that is my story in a nutshell, which has gotten me to where I am today, doing the work I do, living a life where I probably have a completely different set of belief systems and lifestyle than most women I know and most mothers, all because of this core wound of give, 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 give until it hurts, until it kills you. And I'm just no longer willing to do that.
Yeah. I think, it's so interesting in all of the people that I've had, met in life and interviewed and things like that. This common thread of motherhood is this idea of like you said, checking the boxes, doing all the things that are measurable to the outside world. And that's defined as what is good motherhood. However, in all of that, no one considers the mother in that checklist.
Yeah.
And what happens is exactly what happened to you. You know what is right for you and what is not right for you. And I mean, I don't even know when it starts. Like I have 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls, but I have my daughters, we talk about this a lot about if something doesn't feel right, why does it not feel right? Does it not feel right because it feels unsafe? Does it not feel right because it's not right for you? And I mean, my oldest, it started when she was in kindergarten. Oh, I don't want to upset people, or I don't want to, I don't want to speak out about this, that, or the other thing. And I mean, I'm her mom and I'm the one who's in my own life saying, I don't think so. Like, I'm not going to get into that. I am not going to stand for this. All of that. I was very fortunate to have a grandmother that was a very, very outspoken, strong, opinionated woman to have that to look for.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to, I mean, she's one generation and it's this insidious, like in classrooms, you sit and you're good and you do the work and all of those things. And it doesn't really matter what happens to you. Like, get the work done and do the things that you're supposed to do.
Yeah. I find it fascinating that most of the women I work with now are in their 40s ish, 30s, 40s, and they're so burnt to a crisp. There's so much disconnect. I talk a lot about children's behavior and learning the language of reading and understanding emotional behavior. And they're like, I don't get it because I have been taught to not honor myself. So I don't have the skill or understand how to honor my children. And so I'm reactive and I'm living in a survival state. And I'm like, yeah, it's the compound effect. Like, there are definitely moments where you're like, okay, I cannot think about myself right now, but those should be moments and not become an identity or a lifestyle. And when that's all we've known and it's just like we're passing the baton, the compound effect, it's like a slow drip, a slow burn. And you wake up one day and go, I don't recognize myself. I don't feel like myself. A supplement is not going to solve all your problems.
Yeah. I mean, and what are some of the statistics? I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I've been hearing a lot more about this, about cancer diagnosis in women in their like 30s and 40s is the highest climbing incidence of all, men, women, and age groups. Mm-hmm. Women in that sort of midlife stage is the highest growing proportion
Yeah.
of cancer diagnosis. And then you also layer on top of that this generation of people are more likely to be estranged from parents.
Mm.
And I think about how those things, not necessarily one equals the other, but what you were just saying about listening to yourself. And when you start to do the work, I do think that also this generation of people are the ones who are saying, you know what, none of this is fun, but I need to dig myself out of whatever I'm in because everything feels bad. And so I will hire a coach. I will listen to podcasts. I will go to therapy. I will change my career. I will do all those things. And it's sort of once you get that pebble moving in the right direction and things start to change and start to open up and you start searching for that, what feels in alignment, what feels better, what feels more like you, then people are taking inventory of how did I get to that place? And what were all the outside factors when I didn't know what the outside factors were or their impact that led me to where I was. And then now that I'm out of it, hold on a second, why didn't you? Or can we talk about this?
It is such a big cultural shift and conversation. I got into all of this because my oldest triggered the crap out of me. And I remember being at work, working with families and their children and going, I have the exact same problem at home. And except you are being labeled and ridiculed for what is happening. And I'm like, what a hypocrisy. And I'm like, and I know my colleagues are definitely struggling with the same thing, except no one's talking about it. And so I did all the things perfectly. I went, and I'm using air quotes, I went to the doctors because that's what you do first. You go to a pediatrician if you're like, okay, it's the closest thing I got to, I bring the kid to the doctor. Like, I'm just looking for resources. And, of course, that's not their qualification. So I'm like, help me, help me, help me. Okay, go to a therapist, go do this. Okay, I'll go to a therapist, I'll go do this, I'll go do that. And then I'm like, something is off. Something is off. And that's where I started like understanding like mindfulness, like diving into mindfulness. And it slowly, slowly led me back home to myself. But what I realized was my son at the time was triggering the shit out of me to get me to look in the mirror so that we could co-create and kind of walk each other back home. And I mean, that's a daily thing. But even that statement that I just made is not how we grew up. That's not how we parented. That's not how we were parented. Like your child's behavior is there to show you something. And it's not always a reflection of your bad parenting. Actually, almost never. It's, when you can observe someone else's behavior and going, they're struggling, there's a skill that they need and they want to be seen and heard. And sometimes, yes, they're waking up something inside of you that needs to be like shown to you. But most of the time, they just need you to lead. They need you to say and to advocate for them and to say, I got you, and not project your shit onto them or not to be so stressed out that you're using yelling as a stress response or yelling as a parenting strategy. So there's just so much unlearning here and unpacking and dismantling.
Yeah. What led you to social work initially? Because I feel like there was a knowing there. Because context. So I'm an occupational therapist. And so my journey into that field was, I went through all of them, right? Medicine, all the therapies. And I went into my first class in OT school, and it was, an intro class, and they were talking about the difference in all of those and how in OT our goals are not our goals. The patient goals are our goals, and how you have to like look at the person as an individual and all of the factors that go into what makes that person, and how you can help either change the environment or learn new skills and all of that stuff. And I remember leaving class and being like, yeah, exactly it. And I think that has a lot to do with my own bag of crap. So I wonder, going into social work, did you have an inkling, or what led you there?
I don't. Okay, so off the top of my head, I actually don't 100% know. But what I do know is I was always intrigued why people did what they did. And I knew I could not do medicine because even just the sight of like nursing, anything like that, I don't do well with bodily fluids. But I always did well talking to people. And so I was always, I mean, people are always intrigued if you go down that route or you become a therapist of any kind, why people do what they do. But it was never consciously from a place of wanting to like heal myself, right? Like the wounded healer. In hindsight, 100%. It was trying to fix the little child inside of me, or trying to figure out why I felt the way that I felt. But there's also the other aspect to it. Because when I went to college originally, I was going into child and youth work. I was always attracted to helping children, always attracted to helping children. But it was more of like rescuing children. Like I used to play adoption agency as a small child. I always wanted to help children, but not like it was like just rescuing them, not mothering them, just making sure that they were safe. And so when I think about my childhood, I didn't have an adult that was like my rock. I didn't have an adult. Like I had my parents and they were decent human beings, but nobody that I could just fall in their lap and just be 100% myself and feel safe there emotionally. And I think that's probably why, looking back, even like through this conversation, that, you know, I was wanting to become the adult that I needed as a child. The other thing that I found interesting, that when I look at my childhood, I never really experienced, I love diversity in culture. I could sit in circle in conversation with anybody and just listen. Like I love early on, part of my volunteer that I had to do, like in school, I would talk to I'm in Canada, so I talked to a lot of newcomers to the country, didn't speak English. So I would teach them English, or like the inappropriate English, and we would like do funny things and just try to get them to like, the language, the culture, so they could get around or help them with resources. And I don't know why, but I've always been attracted to, again, this through line though, is like, I want to understand you. I want to actively listen. I'm not here to be a white savior. I want to actually help you. And I'm intrigued. I want to know more about your culture. I want to know more about your food. I want to hear about your story. That's always been a through line too, is understanding people's stories and the resiliency of humans. So I love that portion of my job. And when I look back now, like being in business, working with a completely different demographic, I go, what is it that my soul is craving? And it's always going back to culture, giving people a voice, and protecting children.
Yeah. So you knew.
It was a knowing, but it wasn't a conscious knowing.
It's not an overt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought social work, I can get a job with a social work degree rather than like if I have a psychology degree or something like that. But no idea. It's fascinating when you listen to those little whispers and you just lean in, lean in, lean in. Because I first went to college, child and youth work program. I'm like, if I can have a kid at 18, I could probably get into university. Never took a university course in high school. And I figured out how to get in.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating about how, the sort of the divergence from when you start moving away from checkboxes, like social work, you get to, in your experience of it, you get those snippets of the things that you're really looking for. But at that time, you're still checking those boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, it was no one knows what OT does generally. Like people don't meet us until like everything's hit the fan for them. And then they're like, wait, why are you guys like hiding in hospitals? But it's that when I stepped into that and I was away from things that people could understand, right? Like people know what physical therapy is, people know what medicine is and speech therapy and all of that. But it was when I started veering off that path and people couldn't really define that, or they were like, I don't really get what you're doing. I was like, yeah, that's fine, because I feel more pulled to be doing that thing than I do to be making sure that it's okay. Like I still went to the school and got the degree and the hood and the clapping and all of that stuff. But I feel like that for me too was the first, wait a minute, we can, like I can go and do the things that I'm interested in doing while still checking boxes.
I think it's fascinating how when you look through like through lines, like it sounds like you also didn't seek external validation. Like you were just like following, like maybe I feel like we all seek some external validation, but like you'll see people are just like, I did everything right. Like I got the degree everyone wanted me to get, or like the popular degree or whatever it is. And then you're just like, no, I'm just going to go down this path. Like there's an outlier here. Like there's another conversation I want to have. The evidence is there if we look at our behavior. And I tell people this all the time. I talk a lot about alignment. Like I talk about a lot internal alignment. And I'm always reading energy. I'm reading behavior. And I'm like, I don't care what's coming out of your mouth. Based on your behavior, you keep shoving yourself in this box. And then you wonder why you're getting sick, why you're angry, why you're resentful. Like, observe yourself. And when you become the watcher of your life, you're like, yeah, I'm doing things that are not in alignment. No wonder why I'm angry, frustrated, resentful. I'm holding things in. And like, that's not how nature works.
How many of those people that you work with do you encounter when you first meet them? They describe themselves as lost because they are moving away from these checkboxes, or the checkboxes no longer align for them. Because I think that that's one of those first things, like people want to make sure that you're following a trajectory that is easily defined and easy to understand, and they are comfortable with that. And when you start to step outside of that, there's that pressure that can feel like, oh, I feel lost, or someone defines you as being lost or off track or whatever.
So what I find very interesting, and I've had to learn this over the years, especially as a business owner, when you're trying to figure out your target market, right? Or I like to call them psychological factors, values. I'm very, very vulnerable on my podcast, and I've written a book. So people will connect with me in some capacity. Might be my story, might be something I said. The way that they present is very different. So they will say things like, I just need a plan. I need clarity. And then I'm like, okay, what do you want clarity about? And so I will support people in their personal and professional lives. And so usually they want to start with the professional because that's culturally appropriate. Oh, I'm in a career transition. Yeah, I just need to figure out some systems and processes. So it's all this logical left brain shit. And then depending on how honest they're willing to get, they pull it back, pull it back, pull it back. And they're like, I am absolutely terrified of failure. I am scared that I'm failing as a mother. I'm scared that I'm just going to regret my life. I don't often hear people say, yeah, sometimes they're like, I'm lost, or there is a grieving process, but I don't know if they can always identify if they spent enough time with themselves saying, I don't know who I am. And sometimes when they say that, it's because they've never known who they are. And they're going from identity to identity to identity. And I think unless there's like a huge fracture in their life, but oftentimes they're trying to gain control, and then they'll say words like, I need a plan. I need a strategy. So I
Yeah.
think they are saying they're lost, but in a different language.
Yeah, it's that discomfort with, being off track, but also like who's setting this track,
Yeah, what track are you on? Where,
right?
like, what is the playbook that it's like, oh, it's supposed to look like this and I'm way over here. And it's like, well, maybe you're in the wrong forest. Maybe you're not even there is no frickin' path. You have to blaze your own path. But you're trying so hard to be
Mm.
somewhere or someone that you truly do not want to be. And I, at a very, very young age, like looking back, I can see why the work I do and who I am. But I spent a lot of time by myself. Like I was always that seeker, that soul, like always connected to myself. It didn't feel good because there was a lot of anxiety mixed in there and I was just like deep in thought. And when you raise children like that, oh, that's fun too. When they're just like mirroring back to you. And I'm like, okay, here's some tools and strategies. Like, you can sleep. Don't sleep too much because sleep can become a drug of choice where you're going to like shut down. So get sleep and wake up. Although people will tell you you need to sleep more to rest, if you don't feel rested, that's not what you need. So, like, when you're doing like soul hygiene and you're trying to figure out who am I, what's like, it's a dance, it's an art form where you need to take massive action, even though you're going to ruminate and overthink. You need to have boundaries with yourself. So I spent so much time in my head, so much time ruminating. And now I don't want to say I'm soul led, but my desires trump everything. My wisdom, my intuition trumps everything. Where when I started this journey, I was like, oh, we don't listen to that. We don't trust ourselves. We don't listen to the whispers. And over time, whether it was my diagnosis or whether it was a big decision I had to make with our kids and advocating, I'm like, it has forced me, it pushed me into a corner where all I had to do was listen to myself and act from that place or lead from that place. And it always allowed me, although I was blazing my own path and like feel like I had a little machete and I was like, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. I was never on somebody else's path. And I may be right next to it, but yeah, I think it's scary to trust yourself. And that's ultimately what I'm teaching people.
Hmm. I love that because there just needs to be more. I feel like people gravitate towards finding a space where it, like with your kids, right? Like you raise a kid that's like you. One of my kids definitely mirrors a lot of stuff. And the thing that will visibly relax them, that you can see shoulders drop, all that is, there's nothing wrong with you.
Mm.
Like you are not wrong. You feel differently, you feel a lot, you anticipate things, you read other people, all of that stuff. There's nothing wrong with you. However, the world is going to try and tell you that there's something wrong with you because you don't fit a box.
Yeah.
And how do we make it possible for you to carry forward in the world, but not forget all of those parts of yourself?
Imagine growing up having an adult that just like looked you dead in the eyes and said, there's nothing wrong with you.
Oh, I mean, think of how much therapy would save. My schedule would pop wide open.
But I
It's
tell people that all the time. I'm like, you don't have to know the answers for your children or everyone else that you're trying to fix. You just need to become the type of person that they feel safe to be in a relationship with, that they feel safe to hold space for. And you don't have to carry their shit for them. That's a skill in itself. But to look at someone and go, you're not broken, you're clearly struggling or there's something going on. So let's figure this out together. The first time when I started, okay, so I was in social work and I'm like, what am I going to do like outside of this? I started teaching meditation and mindfulness to children. And I laugh now because my first product I ever created was called Teach Your Kid to Meditate. And parents would be like, "Oh, they won't sit still. They won't do this." And I was like, oh shit. I'm like, it should be teach yourself to meditate. But parents didn't want to. They wanted their kid to meditate. But what they actually wanted was a feeling. They wanted their kid to be calm and confident so that they felt confident as a parent. And I was like, listen, you cannot do this just on your kid. You have to co-create with them. But I will never forget this. At the beginning, I used to do workshops in yoga studios because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but let's figure it out. I'll charge $10 a head, and parents would drop their kids off and they would go away, and then they would come back an hour later and they would, I'm not kidding, I was like baffled. They would look at me and go, did you fix them? Like, are they good? And I'm like, oh, they don't get this. And I remember telling the kids, just be you. Just be you. And they'd be like, is this good enough? Because we'd like, do a little visualization and draw something. Is this good enough? Is it? I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, what feels good to you? And I realized, oh shit. Oh my goodness. I can see it now. And there was one kid on the spectrum who ran around the room, did the complete opposite of what he was quote unquote supposed to do, and came back the next week with this beautiful drawing because we would do a little visualization and then we would draw it out. The drawing was almost exactly the words that I was using. Well, every other child that was perfectly in circle doing what they were supposed to do drew guns and trucks, and the boys did the complete opposite of what the drawing was. And his mom said, I am so sorry. Was he disruptive? And I said, he was meditating in his own way. And when, she presented the picture the following week, I said, he was probably the only one paying attention. And I'm like, the fact that we are judging our children's behavior because we don't want them to be disruptive, we don't want them to be different, we don't want them to stick out because we're so afraid of judgment ourselves. But if we could just see and understand our children's behavior for what it actually is, and then align the tools and strategies that are required to support them, what they're really doing is mirroring back how we don't even see and understand ourselves. And so much of what I do, whether it's somebody who desires to scale a business or career transition or create more calm at home, I'm like, if you are just constantly trying to fix the external, you can only do that so long. And then one day you're going to say, I surrender. I'm done. You got to do the work from the inside out. And that's the only way I have seen people be successful and feel successful.
Mm-hmm. Call that, when I talk with my kids about it, call it the lava. Mm-hmm. So we say, like, on the inside, there is lava. And what a lot of times people will do is they will try to have things on the outside, because if it looks like everything else, then it must be like everything else. And so if you have things like toys and, trips and candy, like all of that stuff that's flash marketed and everything that's neon, consuming that doesn't cool the lava. It feeds it. Yeah. And that the only way to cool the lava is to recognize that it's there, to talk about it, to talk about where it's coming from, because all you're doing is feeding it. If you are just taking in things from the outside, you have to figure out where the tap is. And if you can figure out where the tap is, turn it off, let it cool, then it really doesn't matter what the hell is on the outside. Yeah. Right? Like the people that, think about people in your life that are sort of not bound, they're not really beholden to what everything looks like. They're the people that drive the car for 20 years. They're the people that, they don't have the updated aesthetic living room, all of that stuff, but they are happy. Those people have cold lava. Mm-hmm. That's the direction to move forward. Those are the people that are ones to look for as a North Star in all of that, because those people have accepted the inside of them. that they see things differently. They might feel things differently. They might have different opinions of the world and all of that stuff, but they're not trying to catch up to everybody else.
Yeah. I've had the privilege of seeing behind the scenes of so many people's lives from all walks of life. And it is fascinating to me when someone, they have all the things and they will say, my life looks so good on the outside. And I feel like I'm struggling on the inside and I can't keep up. And their actual fear is of stopping. And it's not sustainable. And they know it's not sustainable. And I'm like, what are you running from?
Yeah.
It's okay to want a new car. It's okay to want the vacation. It's okay to want to take your kids to Disney. But if you're like, not this, not this, not this, it's okay to say no, or this is not sustainable. And I do think we're swinging the pendulum a little bit where we've swung it so far and the picture perfect parenting experience and all of that. I think we're coming back a little bit, even in business, especially online. I hate online business. I use resources and technology to connect with people. But this whole world of like, all you got to do is this, and you can have a laptop on the beach and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, the facade is gone, everyone. The gig is up. It takes energy and effort. It takes skill. It's commercialism. It's capitalism. Like, when did we think our value was found in the quality of our clothes or the value was found in the car that we drive? Anyone that I meet that is of quality substance, and what I mean is like you can have a deep intellectual conversation with them, they don't ask me what I do when I meet them. They ask me alternative questions that are connected to like, what are you passionate about? What are you working on right now? Hey, tell me about yourself. Like, there is so much more to life than the things that we are chasing after. And when I'm talking to people, I'm like, who gave you this list? And are you willing to just use your critical thinking skills and question, like, that doesn't work for me anymore? And can you sit with your resistance? The holidays are ridiculous. And I, this year, was like, absolutely not. And the amount of feelings that I had to hold boundaries with myself was beyond. But I thought, if I don't change this current in myself, it's not going to change. And it's okay if my children are disappointed. They will feel disappointment in their lives, but maybe we can redefine what the holiday spirit is about. Maybe we can redefine what family connection is. It's just fascinating the energy and effort it takes to change the current of cultural conversations within ourselves. But I think the more honest conversations we have with each other, we're giving other women and people permission to do the same.
Yeah. And I think that's why conversations like these are so important to put out there, because it's not, how many times as a new mom did you encounter other moms and the conversation went beyond whatever developmental stage they're at, whatever else you have going on, like, in that day, week, whatever it is. And then it's like, and then you're head down running across the playground to chase after your kid because they're, eating sand or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we don't even have these opportunities when we're directly face to face with people to connect, because there are so many things going on. Like, yes, there are the external material things, but then there's also, you're trying to make sure that your kid doesn't fall, because who lets their kid fall? That means that you're a bad mom if you weren't able to, like, mitigate every single risk and moment of discomfort in their life or potential. But yeah, I think, I hope that there is a pendulum swing back to connection for people. That's what, that's why I do this, is that it's this idea of like putting the conversations out there so that people can say, wow, I really identify with that. And I want to know more about what that can feel like,
mm-hmm.
and how that will make sense for me.
When you were talking about the playground, I was thinking about like what I teach people, which is about it's not the thing you want, it's the feeling. And typically you're going to parenting groups, connection, play dates, because you want connection. You want adult conversation. And then you leave feeling more depleted because you're exhausted. Sometimes, I mean, sometimes you do meet amazing people, but it's getting clear on how you want to feel and the intention behind your action. And this, when you were talking, it reminded me of like the village, everyone being like, where's my community? Where's my village? And I'm like, it's not about more people in your life. It's about quality versus quantity. Like, observe what you're actually searching for. Having children, like my oldest, the conversations we have now and like what parenting was like a decade ago, he reflects back to me how he's like, I hated you for that. He's like, I hated that you would not hang out with all of these people. And I'm like, but I wasn't going to be friends with them to please you, because they were just, they had a passion, or like they were, whatever, doing their thing. And I'm like, but it was so surface level. And I was not willing, like that felt like death to me. I was not willing to go hang out with the Joneses to please you so that you could feel like you had status. And I'm like, because that's just not aligned with my values. And he goes, I get it now, but I hated you for it as a kid. And I'm like, I get it. Mm-hmm. And, or I refuse to buy a PlayStation, or like just the values. And he's like, it drove me nuts. And I'm like, I get it. If you are a parent that is trying to live in alignment with your values, you are swimming upstream. You are going against the current so hard. And that's actually what I enjoy about the online space, is like there's little pieces here and there of like, okay, the educational community, the, child behavior community, like the mother's health community. Like there's so many aspects of you. We are not, it's just like the more you are, the happier you are. And that does require you to not piss people off, but to use your voice, and that will ruffle feathers. You will see the keystone you are in your ecosystem. And when you change, everything around you will shift as well.
Yeah. It's that climb out of the bunker.
Yeah.
It's that climb out of the silo where everyone says, no, we don't do that here. You just have to get back in your space, because I can identify with you in this moment, in this role, in this whatever, and I am comfortable with you being here. So I need you to stay here, because when things are all of that, I torpedoed my social capital with the pandemic, actively torpedoed it. And I have no regrets about it. And I think that it's really interesting, because it's that idea of like, that you're going to piss people off when you start acting in a different way. There are people that have made a lot of comments about, the decisions that we made as a family for what was going to happen. And I know that there are people that I still have not talked to.
Mm-hmm.
And the pandemic is years over. But the beauty of all of that is like, when people show you who they are, just believe them the first time, right?
Yeah.
Like, just, okay, I make you uncomfortable because I am not falling into line and doing that, because it doesn't match what I'm comfortable with and what we have going on. Like, we had medical reasons for the decisions that we made, but people were like, what is wrong with you? Nothing. Mm-hmm. Not a damn thing. I make you uncomfortable. And okay, it's not even I'm sorry, right? Like, that's the other part, is like, I'm so sorry I make you uncomfortable. I'm not sorry.
Yeah.
Because you can apologize and think about that spinning around in your head, or you can just be who you are, out and carrying on in the world, ruffling feathers, just presenting as you are.
I find it fascinating how, whether it was pandemic or politics, how people can be so connected in a relationship, and you bring up conversations like that, and they're like, you're a different person than I thought you were. And it's like, I'm still the same person. So there were conditions on our relationship.
Mhm.
And I've swung so far to the other side. I find it difficult to be in relationship with people because when they are not being their authentic self, I find it very, very difficult. Like I cannot stand being in a relationship with a raging people pleaser. Like, I just can't. I'm like, oh gosh, you cause me so much anxiety because I know you're saying yes to please me. Just tell the effing truth. Do you
Yeah.
want to come to this event or not? Don't ghost me. Just say, no, thank you. I'm cool. Like, it is so difficult. And I'm realizing that isolation. I mean, there's billions of people on this planet. If you try hard enough, you'll get a handful of good ones. And, it does take energy and effort. But this, like, who do you want to be? How do you want to feel? How do you want to parent? How do you want to work? What, your health decisions, all the decisions that you make in your life, you will be plucking yourself out of your quote unquote community, your tribe. And there is a primal, there's lots of science behind this. There's a primal instinct that you will have that you are being left alone and like you're going to be the lone wolf. And you were like, I could feel that when every time I decide to up level or I decide to do something different against the grain, I can feel this isolation. And I have to remember that, the leaves will fall where they lie and that I will be okay. I will be okay. And I can find that fulfillment and that connection, not just with the quote unquote right people that are aligned, but also with myself. And the more you return home to yourself again and again and again and again, you're like, I will be okay. At this point, I could probably travel the world by myself and I would be okay. And I would meet people and I would create a beautiful life for myself rather than just busy, go, 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 go. And it's like, what am I chasing?
Mhm. I mean, no one gets out of life alive, right? Like
No,
so you might as well, like you said, you're a ghost in a body it's this, like, you're a ghost in a meat suit and you're on a dirty space rock. Like,
that's
we
how I'm
all
going to
have to
introduce
have
myself now.
and a dirty space rock just floating out in infinite whateverness. Like, it's just not.
And
I
everything
don't
else is
know.
just a game. Everything else
Yeah.
is like, what's the passage of time? Like,
Mm.
how do I want to invest my time while I'm here? Let's do it on things that are curious, challenging, make an impact, make other people's lives better.
Yeah. Well, so you wrote a book.
Mhm.
I want to make sure that we get this in here. Dying to be a Good Mother. That's the title of it.
Yes, Dying to be a Good Mother. It came out in like 2021. It's a prescriptive memoir. So I do talk about my cancer journey, but it is not all about that. So we talk a little bit about parenting, but it's that we're dying to be good for everybody else in our lives. And everyone is searching for the secret. And the actual secret is to live and to figure out how to feel alive. And so, yeah, I tell you my story. I also give you some action items that you can take to get back in alignment with who you want to be, how you want to feel, the impact you want to make.
I love that. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining me today, and let everyone know where they can find you because, I mean, who doesn't want to live in alignment? Who doesn't want to feel better? Who doesn't want to shake off the stuff that doesn't work? So where
Yeah.
can people find you?
I hang out a lot on my podcast, Emotionally Uncomfortable. And I always say emotionally uncomfortable is not just about feeling your feelings, it's also about feeling good because feeling good and thriving is too emotionally uncomfortable, especially when we've been taught and conditioned that feeling like shit equals success. You got to be burnt out. If you're not burnt out, are you not trying hard enough? Yeah. So living in alignment with how you want to feel. But Emotionally Uncomfortable, the podcast, you can follow me on Instagram, my name at Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.